Hello and welcome to New York City Atheists Live on Tape, brought to you by New York City Atheists Incorporated. I'm your host, Dennis Horvitz, the David Letterman of the Hopelessly Damned. I have mentioned the organization SNAP several times over the last few months. It stands for Survivors Network for those abused by priests. Unless you've been hiding in a cave somewhere, you must be aware by now of the scandal that is exploding within the Catholic Church regarding Catholic priests and eventually and bishops involved in the molestation of children. We have since learned and are learning every day that this is not just a Catholic problem, that the percentage of children abused within religions across the board is, I think it's roughly 5 to 7%. It's not just the Catholic Church. We're going to be dealing mostly with that today because of the special situation where the Catholic Church has been overtly and deliberately covering up and enabling the molestation of children. We don't mean to in any way suggest that it's only the Catholic Church. I have with me guests who are members of SNAP. I am a member as a supporter, and I also represent SNAP, where I represent New York City Atheists, and will be representing American Atheists at the SNAP convention this coming summer. But I would like to introduce my guests, Mary Kaplan and Glenda Javaria, both who are local members and activists with SNAP. Thank you very much for joining us. We actually have kind of been discussing this appearance for a few weeks, maybe a few months now, and I just want to very briefly touch upon the fact that we are an atheist organization and we do have an atheist agenda. However, and also we've also discussed the fact that there has been, as they will tell you, that people who come forward within that community, the survivors, because we don't like to refer to people who have been abused as victims. They are survivors and they are fighting back. We don't like to refer to them as victims, but when people tend to come forward, not only in the Catholic Church but all the way around, they are often victimized, re-victimized by their own community. They're not believed. There have been cases of where they have had their lives threatened. They've been cases where they have been demonized. So from both sides, from an atheist point of view and from their point of view, anyone out there might think that we all have our different agendas, and which we do. But I think the most important thing, if we can get across here, is that if you have been victimized by a clergy person, whatever religion you are, even if it wasn't from a religious person, if you've been victimized, that we're going to give you information of people that you can call, and that's the most important thing. So regardless of what you think of my or New York City Atheists agenda or the agenda of my two guests, the important thing is to protect children and to keep this from reoccurring. So with that, I just want to again thank Mary and Glenn for joining me. And I know that both of you have been featured locally and nationally on the various television shows. And maybe Glenn, I know you run the SNAP meeting, the local SNAP chapter. Maybe you just give us a kind of brief description of what SNAP is about.
Well, SNAP organization is a not-for-profit organization created for survivors, by survivors of child sexual abuse. And basically, here in New York, what we have is our own group that meets once a month in Manhattan. And it's a support group for survivors. And it's not only for survivors, for those who have been abused by clergy or priests, mm-hmm. but it's also open to all those that have been sexually abused in any way by family members, any other religious organization, leaders, schools. I mean, this is a societal problem, so
that's right.
We've expanded, the boundaries as far as, where the victims are, coming forward, to share their stories after many years. And SNAP really provides a venue so that survivors can come and support one another
And
Well, that really
supporters,
only-
supporters like me can come and
absolutely.
and-
Supporters are
Right.
always welcome because, if anything, it's very important that we have support from either colleagues or family members and friends because it's a tough road. It's a very lonely road. It's a painful road, and it's always good to have a base of support around you. And who else could understand best than fellow survivors
Right.
and family members or friends that know of your tragic story.
Mary, I know that one of the problems, excuse me, I know that one of the worst, almost even worse than the abuse itself, is the sense of shame that people who have been abused have. And this, I guess, is exacerbated by the fact that, as I said earlier, that the community a lot of times tends to close ranks to protect the clergy person. And I don't know, you have been you were abused by a clergy person in your life, and I'm just wondering maybe give some perspective as to what it's like to go through, coming forward and facing this kind of situation.
I think one of the hardest things is when you come forward and, as I did, and tried to report the person.
Right.
Though I was young, I was 18 at that time, but I was not believed.
Right.
And because my father had just died, and which was the reason my abuser used to seduce me, it was suggested I was either mentally ill because I was speaking against a powerful institution, and powerful institutions often target oppressed people, children, women, whatever. I was either mentally ill or I was in such a deep state of grief. So I was not believed. And now I felt I was excluded from my community. I felt the shame over what happened by my sexual abuse. I felt a deep sense of shame because I was told that by doing this, a spiritual, religious miracle might happen and my father's life might be saved. So I felt a sense of shame that I had let my father die.
Sure.
So there's enormous shame that you carry with you. And as Glenn said, it's a societal problem, but society doesn't really want to hear about it.
Right, right.
So they don't want you to speak up, which is why, thank you for doing this show tonight and letting people hear.
Well, it's like I said, this is just another means to get the word out, to make sure that, again, if you have been abused, or if you know of someone who has been abused, by all means, we will be posting the contact information for snapnetwork.org. And, I think one thing that's important is that SNAP is also open to supporters, because I think people like me, I'm fortunate I was never abused by a clergy person or anyone else sexually when I was a child, but I think it's important for people like me to to have that learning experience, to understand how devastating it is, and to have a sense that you can help. You can help bring a stop to this kind of thing. And I know that, as I have mentioned to both of you before, I think you're both so brave and coming forward, and not just for yourself, but for so many other people who I think down the line will benefit from what you're doing. And from someone like me, as I've said to you, both of you before, I don't see the shame, because I don't see that you have anything to be ashamed of. And I think the more people who are like myself, who are in that position to be supportive, to tell you that, because I think you need to be told that, because there's a difference between intellectualizing it from knowing it, and there's a difference between knowing it and feeling it. And so that's why I show up, and New York City Atheists is very happy and proud to support you in this. And before we go any further, I want to maybe, Glenn, you'd like to mention the Child Victims Act of New York, and what's happening with it, what's going on.
Well, the Child Victims Act of New York is is a bill that's was authored by Queens Assemblywoman Margaret Markey, and is being co-sponsored by Ruth Hassel Thompson, she's a New York State Senator from the Bronx and Westchester, and she pretty much has supported us, and I'm talking about Margaret Markey, for the last 5 years, trying to get this bill across, and it's been a long struggle over the last 5 years. But right now, presently, the Child Victims Act is about to be brought up before the Codes Committee, and we're hoping that they do the right thing, make the right decision, pass it through so that it can be voted on in the future, because what it will do is provide protection.
Right, because it will extend the statutes of limitations for victims by an additional 5 years. Is that correct?
Well, that's one of the things. It extends the statute of limitations from the age of 23, which it is now presently, to 28 years old. But it would also do is provide a 1-year window of opportunity for civil lawsuits to come for those victims and survivors that can prove that they've been abused, and to have an opportunity to receive some sort of a justice, for the pain and agony that they suffered over the years.
Which kind of brings me to something that I've been, I've actually been following this for about a year, and there's a link that you can go to, abusetrackers.org, and it's a list of various articles from all over the world, actually, dealing with child abuse. And when I click on these articles, sometimes they'll have like it'll be a comment. There'll be a section at the end for comments. And every so often, you'll see people who kind of like are basically clueless, or they just don't get it, and they'll say, well, these people who are coming forth now after 40 years are just basically trying to shake down the church for money. And I think people don't realize that a lot of times that when these things happen, that the memory is suppressed. And I've read many, many stories of where after sometimes someone who is abused will hear of somebody else being abused, and that will trigger a reaction, and then it all comes pouring out. Now, look, I mean, sooner or later somebody's going to abuse the system and try to shake down the church, but by and large, most of these people, in most of the cases that I read about, in fact, the church has said that they have credible information. So I just think that, as Michelle Betty said to me last summer, evidence is evidence. And if they haven't got the evidence, then they haven't got the evidence. But it makes no sense to deny the people who are abused the opportunity to bring forward this kind of thing. This is very important. So, what can viewers out there, what can they do to help support this act, the Child Victims Act of New York?
Well, education is key.
Right.
The more that you know about what the bill is about, you could always look at on the internet,
right,
online. There's also a website called Statute of Limitations Reform, SOL
right.
Reform. It will explain everything that the bill is about. Basically, it's providing an opportunity for victims to have the voices heard, and what it would really do would be forcing not just church institutions, but all public and private institutions, schools, centers, all kinds of programs, to open their books and to find out who are these predators that are still working and still hiding behind their institutional walls, to come forth, to hand them over to the justice, to face the police, and to find out what's really going on behind these organizations, because the opposition that we're really getting is more than just the Catholic Church. We're getting that all the way from the public school system. And
major Orthodox Jewish groups are opposing the Child Victims Act.
There's a lot to lose
right.
But what it comes down to is accountability.
Right.
And you can't, keep, denying the truth. This is something that's a horrific crime that's being perpetrated on children, which is rape. It's just rape.
It's that simple. It's
That's all
rape.
it is.
That's what it is. It's rape, and after that, it's basically the people who are covering these people are aiding and abetting a crime.
Absolutely, absolutely.
It's aiding and abetting, which is a crime itself. So it's not just the abusers who are criminals. It's the people who give them aid and comfort and shelter, and who shuffle them around so that they can rape more children. That's also a criminal act. Mary, you were well. I know both of you in the last couple of months have been involved in some demonstrations. There was one of which I couldn't make because I was hosting a show for New York City Atheists. But what was the last demonstration that you participated in?
Our last demonstration was on Good Friday, which in the Christian religion is one of the holiest days celebrated. It was in front of St. Patrick's Cathedral, where Archbishop Dolan, who is in charge of the whole archdiocese here in New York, was, and we were there to speak out, because there are so many people, you were just speaking to Glenn, what can people do, who are so fearful that if they speak out against the church or against any institution that is powerful, that there will be retaliation.
Yes.
That schools will close, that hospitals will close, that in fact the institutions say this. You take our money and we will have to close schools. We will close services for you.
Wasn't that true in some dioceses in the Washington D.C. area? I think, wasn't that a couple of months ago? I'm not. The location escapes me actually, but.
And also right here in New York and Brooklyn.
Is that true? Really? Yeah.
The bishop there threatened that if this happened, schools would be closed, Catholic schools would be closed, hospitals would be closed. So fear is a great factor.
Right.
And when people are fearful, they're afraid to speak out against protecting children.
Yeah.
But to add to that, the truth is, in California, in 2003, they passed, their version of a Child Victims Act, and what it did was expose 300 unknown and hidden predators.
Right.
And they were brought out into the open, and they were, dealt with. I mean,
Right.
those are the type of results that we're looking forward to having here in New York.
Right. And it's unfortunate that it's kind of come to that. That there is that sense of that it's got to be some kind of trade-off. But I don't know that that's necessarily true. But I know that they're getting a lot of mileage by presenting it that way. So I mean, what are they trying to say? Well, you either let us rape children, or we're going to close some hospitals. I mean, it's nonsensical. You can't. You just can't work that way. It's got to be. You got to do the right thing. To the best.
Well, as a survivor and 3 times over, being molested by a family member, being sexually abused by a baseball coach, and then by a Catholic priest who I trusted this to. It's something that's very important to stress, that what's going on now is it's just a battle. It's a battle because what these organizations, these powers that be, are pretty much doing is passing the buck.
Yeah.
And understanding that laws need to be, strengthened, for the safety of children. That's the most important thing.
Now, I don't know if you want to discuss this, but I know that there was the priest that abused you has you've kind of been trying to follow up on this guy. Is that correct? Or can you mention anything about that? Or
well, basically, I after another young person reported him, I decided to come out to support this other person from my community parish, and the priest was removed, but eventually he was moved to Philadelphia, and this is the type of thing that we were just
same old
same old story.
Same old, right? Okay, the reason I just want to point out too that As someone who attends SNAP meetings, basically, Glenn and Mary actually have come forth to, tell their story, but I want to point out that, and you can back me up on this, that when you go to a SNAP meeting, and this is for people who have been abused and want to come to a SNAP meeting, anything you say is completely confidential. Nobody, unless you want to come out and discuss the problem, your identity is confidential, and anything you say and anything that is said to you at these meetings is completely confidential. So if that's in your mind and that's what's holding you back from coming to SNAP meetings and affiliating, please rest assured. There have been people from the meeting that I have spoken to publicly, but I've gotten their permission. One of whom was, you were there last year, Rabbi Nachum Rosenberg,
Yes.
who, and I think it's also fair to say that there are members of the Catholic and Jewish and Protestant communities who are becoming very proactive in stopping this problem within those communities. Rabbi Nachum Rosenberg is one of them, who was actually shot at for dealing with it in the Jewish community.
And created a hotline.
And created a hotline. Well, I think he created a hotline that involved tips on how to avoid being victimized, and also what to do if you have been victimized. And he apparently was shot at. And again, I mentioned Rabbi Rosenberg's name because I specifically got permission from him to do so. But if you are going to come to a SNAP meeting, and if you have been, I strongly encourage you to do it. You will find a very supportive group there. And I think, because I know from my having been there for months, I've seen people who started out, who kind of, I don't know if the right word is blossomed, but certainly who have visibly benefited from the support that they get. So it's a very good thing. And if you support SNAP, I think you should go to your local, find out where your local meeting is, because your participation, either as a survivor or a supporter, will be very appreciated, and you do a lot of good things. So the last, I'm sorry, I kind of got off the last time you were demonstrating in front of St. Patrick's, is that correct?
That's right.
And the specific cause, the specific issue that you were dealing with was the Child Victims Act, or was it just a general?
The message that we wanted to share that day was to ask or to demand, really, that the hierarchy of church, of this, not hide behind things like immunity, not hide behind legal tricks, and come out and open their books and open the locations of the predators so we can protect children. Basically, we were there to plead, demand that this stop, this protection of predators stop, and this terrible harm to society
Right.
of this child abuse stop.
Right, because it's a horrible drain.
And if I may add,
Yeah.
very importantly, the event was actually organized by another organization, which is a lay Catholic, a group called Voice of the Faithful.
Voice of the Faithful,
That
which you
really
mentioned.
organized this, and which was very important and empowering to know that there are individuals within the church that strongly support, the survivors, the victims, and are also, disappointed, and some are even fed up that this is not being addressed the way it should be. I mean, to think that it's still, these predators and child rapists, still working in ministry, retired, all around the world, and still have access to children. It's just numbing,
There's a book by this author who has actually been a guest on the show. His name is Darrell Ray, and he wrote a book called The God Virus. and he discusses how religion is spread not unlike a virus. He takes Richard Dawkins' notion of what they call a meme, which is something that which is kind of a cultural passing on of information in the same way that genes physically are passed on. But he said that in this book that one reason why clergy people are so protected is because a religious institution invests a lot of money in training these people. And we're talking, you know, $150,000, sometimes $250,000 over the course of a person's career that the church has thrown in, and they're not going to, you know, they're not just going to just throw that away. In any case, I'm getting the 2 minutes sign. I hope you hang around and do another segment with me. And,
Sure.
Our guests have been my guests have been Mary Kaplan and Glenn Echevarria of SNAP. That's Survivors Network for those abused by priests. If you have been abused by anyone as a child or anyone, even as an adult, taken advantage of by a person who has been in your trust, please contact SNAP. That's snapnetwork.org, and we're going to put that information up on the screen. Again, thanks to Mary and Glenn for joining us.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching. You've been watching New York City Atheists live on tape. I've been your host, Dennis Horvitz. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again next week.